Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, as our YouTube viewers have already figured out, I'm wearing my Mets pullover today in a desperate attempt to reverse what feels like an inevitable slide into the playoff where they blow the division. They were already blown their lead in the division. They lost to the stupid Marlins last night. It feels inevitable they will lose to the stupid Marlins again, and then this weekend they're supposed to be in Atlanta, and now there's a hurricane, and everything is terrible, Tony. Tony, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well, Tom, and I want to tell you about that. But first, we're going to have to take it to the studio. Aaron Judge is up to bat, so we want to get you guys over there and let you see how he's doing.
Man, I can't wait to see him walk again.
You cut into my college football game, and I am writing a letter to somebody about that.
The game is on a TV channel. It's on another TV channel. You can find the game on whatever TV channel that's on if you are super interested in it. But like, guy might tie the American League home run record. Like, cool, I guess. I mean, if we want to make this the free of steroid taint, tie the home run record. Like, it's like, all right, this is. If you have to explain the record by, with more than like 3 words, like, my interest level starts to tail off. Like, yeah, man, he's had a great season. He's going to look great as a Met next year. I can't wait for the Yankees fans complaining about the Mets throwing money around. That's what I'm maybe most excited about in the whole Aaron Judge thing, is Yankees fans getting all butthurt because the Mets will pay Aaron Judge more than the Yankees do. And money is ruining baseball. Good. Eat it. Anyway, on with the show.
Yeah, well, and just those Yankees fans are having it tough right now. The Dallas Cowboys are struggling. It's just a tough time to be a Yankees fan. And Notre Dame is not playing well. Just think of those people, Tom.
I try not to.
Yeah. Let's get our show started. Here, we're going to do some listener questions today. We're right in the midweek, one day before the bold predictions show. Just thought let's do a pre-palate cleanser. Because then after the bold prediction show, we have to preview the Rutgers game. And I think maybe this show allows us to not yet talk about Rutgers, which is a pretty good thing. So let's go ahead and get the questions started, Tom, if you would, please.
I will, and the first one is from @Brock774-11489. Will depth at corner and potentially offensive tackle next season, with depth at corner and potentially offensive tackle next season a concern? One thinks of recruitment/NIL. Is utilizing NIL monetarily as a recruitment tool more easily done with players in the transfer portal versus high school players? Any notable differences between conferences? Thanks.
It is going to be interesting to see how Ohio State attacks the free agent market, if you will, because that's what the transfer portal is. And you're going to have, I think, savvier players because they're going to be older and they won't necessarily be these high school kids that are kind of being swung at from all different angles. There's going to be proof of concept in terms of what that school can do for a veteran player. And at this point, you also have a lot of experience with everybody has brought in transfers now. And now you'll have like a year of NIL as evidence of like, well, what have you done for your transfers? I know what you've done for the recruits. Show me what you're doing for your transfers and show me how those guys are making money. But I would think if there is a star left tackle out there, we know the going rate for a high school 5-star left tackle was $500,000 or something like that. I think a plug and play left tackle out of the transfer portal for like an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia, that's going to be a second to like a quarterback.
Yeah, it does feel like that's a position. And I think that probably correlates pretty tightly with the positions that are in real high demand in the NFL draft. If you play a position that is probably going to land you potentially as a top 5 NFL draft pick, you are probably playing a position that is going to land you potentially, top 5 NIL money. Now, Tony, you could never use money as a direct inducement to get a player because that's the rule, Tony, and that's why it's never happened before. Anyway, so yes, I think you're probably, especially in terms of those guys, those guys being needing to be plug and play next year. Obviously, transfer portal is going to be the spot where you're probably going to be looking. I'm going to guess they are not going to be the only team looking for an offensive tackle next year. They're probably not the only team looking for a cornerback next year. So, that will be a difficult market. And they have not had a ton of success there. I mean, they, the guys who they've brought, you brought in Tanner McAllister this year, and he's been a very important part of the team. But the Jim Knowles thing was there. That was not a pure NIL thing. There's a existing Jim Knowles relationship there. And, Parker Lewis, is going to finally get a chance to play. He finally got cleared this week, which is good, good. And why on earth did it take that long? I don't know. But hooray, NCAA, way to do your jobs. So, they've brought in guys, but they haven't brought in, like Alabama had brought in Henry To'oTo'o or Jamison Williams or Eli Ricks. And, some of those have panned out better than others, but, they've kind of hit that, and Jahmyr Gibbs too. They have done that a little more aggressively than Ohio State does. It'll be interesting to see how aggressive Ohio State is there because, I think you look at some of the guys who have transferred, for Ohio State, like Jonah Jackson, that comes to mind as a really immediate plug and play kind of option for them on the offensive line. But Michigan's starting center came from Virginia this year, and he's was an All-American, I think, at Virginia last year. So, that can be an immediate impact thing. I think there are conferences that have done a better job with that and programs that have done a better job with that than others. But, I think your money is probably, it's kind of an interesting argument because you're getting a little bit more of a sure thing with a proven veteran player in the transfer portal versus a recruit coming in from high school. But also you're potentially only getting that guy for like a year as opposed to potentially getting him for 3 or 4 years. So there's a little trade-off there, but yeah, I mean, in terms of immediate patches, yeah, the transfer portal has to be where you're looking.
And with corner, they're bringing in 3 freshmen, at least right now, 3 freshmen in the 2023 class. They'll have Denzel Burke back. Like you'll have J.K. Johnson, who has starting to prove himself, Jordan Hancock, Jair Brown, Ryan Turner. I don't think corner is as much of a concern as offensive tackle, assuming offensive tackle is a concern. Because if Paris Johnson leaves, then you're talking, Zen Mahalski, Josh Fryer, or something like that. And those may be your 2 starting tackles unless something changes. So they may want to go get 2 tackles. I'm not sure. I know they like Fryer, but do they like him better as a guard than an emergency tackle? We will see.
All right, next one from Hank Scorpio's Beard. Will Ohio State be a double-digit favorite in every regular season game this year? I don't know who they wouldn't be a double-digit favorite against. I mean, Penn State is going to be, Penn State's going to be probably close-ish, assuming they keep winning. But, that's even on the road, that's probably like a 13 or 14 point line maybe. And it feels like that's one that opens at 13 and ends up at 17 at game time. And, maybe Michigan, if it was on the road, maybe that's under 10, but it's at home this year. So I think that's probably one that starts at, in the 12 to 13 range probably and ends up at 17 or so before the game starts. So yeah, I don't think there's one that's going to be even, you're going to be, if you had money on the outcome of this question, I don't think there's one that you would even be sweating out on a Thursday or a Friday afternoon. This feels like this is going to be an easy yes to me. What about you?
Yeah, and I'm just looking to see over the last few years if that has happened before. It would have happened in 2020, but of course Michigan chose not to play the game. But yeah, like I'm with you. Especially after seeing Maryland and Michigan this past week, I think you can go ahead and set it at 12.5 or 13 and see which way it goes. And I don't think it's going to go down just yet. But last year they were double-digit favorites against everybody except for Michigan. They were 7-point favorites. 2019, double-digit favorites against everybody except for Michigan again, on the road again. That was a -9. And then that's been as close as they've gotten over the years. Of course, as I said, 2020, they were double-digit favorites against everybody that year as well. So that was a shortened year, but this could be the first time in, I have to go back and check our Phil Steele 40 years of Ohio State lines to see the last time they were a double-digit favorite every single year. But I do expect it. Yeah, I'm expecting the same thing you are.
All right. Speaking expecting history to be made this year, next one from Cubert Spuckler. Where will Cade Stover finish in best seasons for an Ohio State tight end in history in terms of receptions? Can he get into the top 5? Now, number 1 is Billy Anders, 55 catches for 1966. I'm going to say no on that one. Number 2, John Frank, 45 catches in 1981 and also in 1983, so that's 2 and 3. Number 4 is Jeff Ellis with 40 catches in 1988. Number 5 is Bob Grimes, 39 catches in 1952. That's the number to beat. Ricky Dudley, 6 with 37 catches. Ben Hartsock, 7 with 33 catches. Right now, Cade Stover averaging 3 catches per game. So that, you multiply that out times 14, 15 games, and the math says, yes, he's on pace to exceed those numbers. And I don't really see, assuming he stays healthy, I don't see any reason to expect those numbers to drop significantly. I don't think he just disappears from the passing game when Jackson Smith-Njigba comes back or whatever. That feels like he's going to be someone who remains a weapon in there, and I don't think he's going to be 8 catches for 200 yards against anyone, but he could continue to average 3 catches per game and get up to it's not out of the realm of possibility that he gets to 45 this year, tying John Frank, because that would be continue averaging 3 catches, play 15 games, that gets you to 45. So somewhere in the top 5, I think top 5, top 4 is certainly realistic this year. What do you think?
I expect him to fall somewhere between Ricky Dudley and Ben Hartsock, but I also don't think he necessarily needs to have a drop off in production once Jackson Smith-Njigba is back. In fact, I can see everybody else having an uptick because they're more open once Jackson Smith-Njigba is back and he's commanding more of the defense. You've got Jackson Smith-Njigba on one side of the field, one side of the middle of the field, like one seam, and the other seam is just Cade Stover running with a linebacker. Like there's some opportunities there, and having the success that he's had, it's like, why would they go away from him now? I don't think they would. And all you're asking is for 4 or 5 passes to go his way a game, because he's catching 3, but he's being targeted 4, 5, 6 times a game. And really, I think it's the other guys that would take hits in terms of seeing their touches go, because they like what throwing to Cade Stover does for the offense. And defenses, I mean, if the defense is picking its poison in the passing game, and you've got Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, or Jackson Smith-Njigba, you're going to be least focused on Cade Stover because he's the 4th most dangerous pass catcher. And that's going to be the case no matter what receivers are out there, because the receivers are so good. And it's not like you're going to put a corner on him or anything like that. And if you want, then maybe he can bully that guy. So it's been a long time, and I do remember Jeff Ellis, big number 89 in 1988, catching a bunch of passes. You think back, it seemed like Ricky Dudley caught a lot more than 37 back then, but 37 catches was a lot in the 90s. And then Ben Hartsock, you kind of forget how many times he caught the ball in 2003. And I think I don't think he's going to get into the top 5 though. I just think there's always games where you catch 1 or none, and not necessarily any games where you catch 8 to make up for the off game.
I think you're going to have a game where he gets 5 or a game where he gets 6, and then that makes up for 1 where you have 1. And I think that yes, Ricky Dudley caught 37, but that was in 13 games. If Cade Stover has 2 extra games, Dudley was essentially on the 3 catch per game pace, just a shade under 3 catches per game. I think he can stay on that pace just on average, because one thing that you didn't mention there is, when Jackson Smith-Njigba comes back, that's going to pull someone off the field. That someone is not going to be Cade Stover. That's going to be one of the receivers. One of the other receivers can come off the field, because Ryan Day has talked in the past about the fact that, they really want that tight end out there as a big part of that run game. They don't feel the offense runs as well without that tight end out there. So I don't think Jackson Smith-Njigba returning is going to have a material impact on Cade Stover snaps. Maybe Joe Royer returning, maybe he becomes takes some of those tight end snaps when he gets back from his injury. But at this point, I don't know. It feels like Cade Stover is pretty cemented as tight end 1 there for that team. So I would we can embrace debate here. That's fine. I will say yes. Tony will say no. Tony, not a big believer in Cade Stover. Not sure he even owns cows. I mean, Tony, you've said a lot of shameful things on this show over the years. Or do you not believe he's a farmer, or do you not believe they're going to play more than 12 games? Which is your exact point of question here?
First off, I would like to know, what exactly are we disagreeing on? Did I say he's going to fall somewhere between Hartsock and Dudley, and you're saying he's going to be what like 40s?
I'm saying he's going to be I say he hits, he gets in the top 5, so he's 39 or above. You're saying okay, between Dudley and Hartsock, say 35. If you don't believe in him, that's fine. What I would encourage you to do is tell him to his face that you don't believe in him, because, he seems like he's, Also tell him, I don't even think you're a good blocker. I bet you can't even knock me down blocking. I would lead with that.
Hey, cowboy. And that's being a derogatory term, not a one-word term.
All right, next one from Santos L. Halper. Who finishes with more yards receiving this year, Julian Fleming or Cade Stover? Boy, Tony, I bet we know your answer, hater.
Well, I do think that Julian Fleming is on his way to having a 100-yard game at some point. And I thought Cade Stover was on his way against Toledo, and he's topped out at 5 for 83 or something like that. So certainly there's potential there for Stover. I also think Stover is going to have one of these 60-yarders down the seam and be on his way to a 100-yard game. But over the course of the season, Julian Fleming as one of 3 outside receivers, Cade Stover, as you said, never leaving the field. He will probably finish with more snaps than any other receiver. Like him and Marvin Harrison probably are going to be very close. CJ Stroud will have the most snaps. Offensive line, probably the second most. And then it's going to be Cade Stover or Marvin Harrison in terms of who has more snaps than that. But I am going to go with Julian Fleming on this. I think I see a couple of 100-yard games in his future. He's probably, if I say somewhere in the 500-yard range this season, I don't think that's outrageous right now. Cade Stover already has, I think, 188. Yeah, he's averaging 45 yards a game, so he's on pace for 700 yards. I don't know that that's going to happen, as I've said. But now that I'm talking this out, I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as I was thinking. And right now, Cade Stover has 188 yards to Julian Fleming's 90 yards. Fleming missed the first 2 games. Stover has played every game and has twice as many yards. It seems like it could be an interesting race to watch this season.
It definitely is, because it feels very much like these guys could finish within 50 yards of each other, one direction or another. And how much is the ball going to go to Cade Stover? How many big plays is Julian Fleming going to hit? Is Julian Fleming going to miss any more games? All of these things sort of go into this calculation, because it feels like, Cade Stover has a 188 to 90 yard advantage right now over Julian Fleming. But as you said, Fleming has missed 2 games. And it just, you see Fleming on the outside, and it's like he's going to have a 75-yarder at some point this year. And that is going to be a decent chunk of a season total for both of these guys is, a 75, 80-yard touchdown. So I think I'm going to go with Fleming here, but I think this is a tremendously interesting question, because there's so many different variables in here that are just impossible to know. Health and how are the reps going to change when Jackson Smith and Jigba comes back, and how many big plays is Julian Fleming going to hit? Or, frankly, there was, I think the first ball to Cade Stover, the first ball that he caught kind of just over the middle, where the safety came up and hit him. There was no one behind that guy. So if he broke that one tackle, then he's got a 60-something yard touchdown right there. So I think this is going to be a real close race to watch throughout the course of the year. I will go with Julian Fleming, but just by a little bit, and not at a particularly high level of confidence on that one. All right, last one from Prince Skipper Skipple. Where are the biggest Big Ten tests coming for the Ohio State defense this season? And boy, Tony, is the college football playoff an acceptable answer here? Because, no, it says Big Ten test. Boy, Michigan. I think in order, it's probably Michigan, and then a somewhat significant drop off, and then Penn State, and then, Maryland, I guess. And there's just not that many great offenses in the Big Ten this year. Really, there's one, and then Michigan's the second best. And Michigan Michigan, I think, has they kind of have all of the pieces. They've got a pretty good line. They've got a good running back. They've got a quarterback who's not going to win the Heisman this year, but who is dangerous and can make some big plays. You've got a decent wide receiver core. You've got tight ends who are going to, just be chain movers, but, and we'll see how long Eric All is out. But I think just overall that Michigan offense is kind of the most well-rounded. Penn State's probably second, but, I'm not 100% bought in on that offensive line yet. Sean Clifford is he is what he is at this point, and I don't think you're going to see Drew Aller, who, is probably behind. Even if Drew Aller is there, Drew Aller comes in behind J.J. McCarthy in terms of, what he could be this year. We'll see 2 years from now what Drew Aller is, or next year what Drew Aller is, but this year, true freshman, you just can't expect that much. And the two running backs, the running backs are good there. And Nick Singleton has shown off some home run ability. I just feel like Nick Singleton, when he could play, when he goes against Ohio State, if Nick Singleton has a, 15 carry, 110 yard, 120 yard game, he's going to be 1 carry for 65 yards and then 12 carries for, 40 or whatever, whatever the number is, where it's just 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, loss of 3, 4, a 6, back to 2, and then a 65. And, he's explosive. I don't think that Penn State offense is going to be able to run the ball consistently enough against Ohio State. So then you're relying on the quarterback and the passing game. I don't think Sean Clifford is going to be able to consistently move the chains against this Ohio State defense. The wide receiver core is okay. They've got the transfer kid from Western Kentucky. They got Parker Washington. They've got Bretton Strange at tight end. They have guys who are playmakers, but they're not like super explosive. Maryland. You just saw Maryland against Michigan. They're okay. They've got some talent on the outside. They've got Rakeem Jarrett. They've got Dante Demas. You got Tola Tagovailoa. They've got some good running backs, but the offensive line wasn't great. It just and then after that, it's just kind of who's Michigan State? Are you buying Michigan State at all this year? I feel like I'm not. Who is the fourth best offense they're going to face this year?
Well, and exactly, and what portion of that offense gives Ohio State the most trouble? Like Michigan State, I like what Peyton Thorne can do, but he doesn't do it enough and doesn't do it well enough as often as he needs to do. I'm just looking at Keon Coleman had a good game receiver for Michigan State against Washington, 9 catches for 116 yards. How does he respond the next week? He has 4 catches for 25 yards against Minnesota. So when you have these ups and downs, you never know who to rely on. And it's like Michigan State would need everybody to be an up at the same time, and then also hope the defense is an up. But that one, I like the potential of the Michigan State passing game, but they have no running game right now. So you don't have to, they don't have the balance to really scare Ohio State or to beat Ohio State. Scaring is one thing. Then Iowa. And then, but the Penn State thing, I'm with you on Nick Singleton, where, he's probably going to make a big play, but it'd be a lot like the Braylon Allen thing, where you contain him for most of the game, and he pads his stats with the one big gain. Sean Clifford can keep stuff alive and make plays, but again, you never know when he's going to throw you the ball. So that's another instance where, like Peyton Thorne, Sean Clifford, anybody from Northwestern, there's nothing there. But even at Maryland, I was surprised by how well Michigan's defensive backs did against Maryland's receivers. A little unimpressed by the Terrapin receivers, who have shown to be better than they were in that game. But losing Rakeem Jarrett when they did, that hurt. But I think Ohio State holds up against them as well. They might want to get you Talia Tagovailoa better than Michigan did. He had some clean pockets to throw from. But yeah, it's Michigan, and several reasons for the Michigan thing. The offensive line, as you mentioned, will be the best that Ohio State goes against, including the Wisconsin line that they bullied around this past week. But I'm interested to see how Blake Corum can do, because he's a guy that can make guys miss. In this Ohio State defense, they like to gang tackle and stuff, but a lot of the times it's just Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers coming clean because the defensive line has muddied stuff up and making a tackle. What happens when that guy is missing a tackle? What happens when Tommy Eichenberg starts missing tackles because he's playing Blake Corum, who makes a miss? Can the other guys then crash down and keep what should have been a 2-yard gain from being a 12-yard gain from being a 40-yard gain? And how well can they do against him? And then if that gets going, the passing game, the play action stuff will help. I just wonder how much calmer and relaxed will J.J. McCarthy be to where I don't have to make a play every single time. I don't have to hit a home run. I can take what the defense gives me, but what will Ohio State be giving them? And I think Ohio State's secondary will be able to, I don't want to say handle or contain Michigan's receivers, because I think they're good enough. The receivers are good enough to make plays here and there. I don't think they overwhelm you like Ohio State's receivers do. Ronnie Bell can make plays. In certain circumstances, any of these guys can make plays. We can see Cornelius Johnson get behind the defense. Is this going to be the point in the season when J.J. McCarthy is able to hit those guys? Because he wasn't able to do it in this game against Maryland, but this was also his first real game. So I think there's plenty to be concerned with Michigan, both passing game and running game. Are you more concerned, or should Ohio State be more concerned with Michigan's passing game or Maryland's passing game?
I guess the actual answer there is Michigan's passing game, because it comes with Michigan's defense, while Maryland's passing game comes with Maryland's defense. So therefore, Michigan is more of a threat because they're actually more of a well-rounded team. I think Maryland's going to pass the ball probably for more yards against Ohio State, probably, but the thing that you didn't mention there is, okay, Donovan Edwards comes back. What does Donovan Edwards do receiving out of the backfield? You've seen him have big games. He had a monster game against Maryland, I think it was last year, out of the backfield. You haven't really seen teams throw to the running back against Ohio State, so we don't necessarily know quite how they're going to handle that this year with Jim Knowles. And again, that gets back to your point about guy in space, and then you've got to make a tackle in space. And if you miss the one tackle, you have seen Donovan Edwards run a long way with the football. So that's a little bit of a question. The other thing that's kind of an interesting dynamic there is this upcoming weekend at Iowa. This is the first time you're going to see J.J. McCarthy in a little bit of a hostile situation. And, that how is he going to handle that? Because first year starter, sometimes you can get a little amped up. You can be a little overjuiced. And, that's a solid Iowa defense. The offense is not worth a darn, but the Iowa defense is pretty solid. We have, Tony, seen teams struggle, pretty good teams struggle in that Iowa atmosphere over the years. You wonder how he's going to respond to that, because, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he comes out and throws a couple picks in the first half and gets them in a little bit of trouble, just being over anxious, and then you're in the Iowa dogfight game that everyone seems to fall into there at Kinnick, where it's, boy, this Iowa offense is terrible. How do they keep winning games 18-15? It's like, well, if you hand them some short fields and you hand them, you throw a pick six and you throw another one that the Hawkeyes can return inside the 5, like, well, that's 10 points. So that is how Iowa kind of makes it work. And it'll be interesting to see. We have seen J.J. McCarthy try to do too much. It'll be interesting to see if he plays sort of a, contained, can they kind of keep him under control, not have him try to do too much, not try and play hero ball, and just kind of take what's being given to him and be a little bit patient. That feels like that's going to be a real big key to how this game goes for Michigan this weekend.
I'm just looking at the Winsipedia page for Michigan and Iowa. The last time Michigan won in Iowa.
Let's see. This feels like a question that is probably going to be a long time, because they've played there twice in 12 years or something. So I am going to say 1892. No, 2016.
2005.
Wow.
Was the last time Michigan won at Iowa.
How many times have they lost there since then?
Yeah. And the last time that Michigan won in Iowa by more than one score, 1994. Like, even when Michigan wins in Iowa, it's by 3 points, by 6 points, by 4 points. These are always close, and so we'll see how it goes. There's no faith in the Iowa offense, but if they can take advantage of J.J. McCarthy putting the ball on the ground and get some cheap points, some 7-yard touchdown drives, something like that, who knows what happens in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's gonna be a real interesting game. I feel like that's pretty intriguing to me. Where you've got Michigan, I think, is number 4, and everyone's looking at them as number 4 and going, "Wow, they're invincible." It's like, I don't think they're invincible. I just think there are 3 great teams, and then there's a bunch of teams that could lose to. I feel like anyone from about 4 to 25 could lose to anyone else, kind of in that range or a little below that range during any given week. That's especially true on the road. That's especially true in a place built on some kind of ancient Big Ten burial ground like Kinnick Stadium is or Ross-Ade Stadium is. So, yeah, I'm intrigued to see that. And that's one where if Michigan comes out and wins, they come out and win that game 27-10. And J.J. McCarthy has a not spectacular, but just a really just solid, don't make mistakes, take what's there. That's going to show me a lot. I don't think the expectation there for him is he's going to go in there and throw 6 touchdowns. Like, that's not what success looks like this weekend. Success looks like, does he complete 70% of his passes for 9 yards of completion and like a touchdown or 2 and no picks? If he has that line, which is a very unspectacular line, if he has that line, that's a little bit of a wow to me to go into Iowa City and do that.
Iowa has won 5 of the last 7 between these two teams in the regular season. Of course, Michigan destroyed them 42-3 in last year's Big Ten championship game. So I guess that will then do it for this episode. I want to thank you all for joining us. A reminder to check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com. If you've thought about becoming a member, try it now. See what you think. Premium message board and tons of interaction information being shared there as well. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And go ahead and hit that bell to be notified. If you haven't subscribed yet, go do that as well. So that will do it for this episode. We will then talk to you guys tomorrow.